Today we have Amjad Masad from Replit, who just raised $250 million at a $3 billion valuation. Despite building a company where most employees actually go home for dinner with their families, yes, they do 9, 9, 6, but they do it in different formats, different times, not all in the office at the same time. Fun fact, he's the guy whose revenues keep getting leaked by VCs. It's 150 million AR now, by the way, if you have seen it on Twitter. He thinks we're about to see a lot more millionaires and 100,000aires building agents on the Replit platform, and a lot fewer billionaires, getting rich by building apps that take it all. Small apps on the Replit platform. This is why I'm so excited to talk to Amjad. We share the same vision, and today you're going to see more of it. Amjad, let's get paid. Amjad, so good to have you. It's been a dream of mine to talk to you in person. Huge fan of your trajectory, huge fan of your work, huge fan of your ethos. So it's a treat to have you here.
My pleasure.
All right. So where do we start? So we were caught off as we were talking about of you're building a company. You're in Palo Alto right now. You're building a company in the South Bay. You were talking about why employee happiness was a thing that was important for you. So when we carry on with that conversation.
Yeah. So, I've been working on Replit, and prior to Replit, I was running a side project also called Replit, and it was an open source project. It's always kind of the same vision. How do you make programming more accessible? How do you make it so that more people can do software? Right now, it's a mainstream idea. At the time, it wasn't. There was this uh, sort of gatekeeping around software. It's like, oh, you have to go to Stanford for 4 years so you can write some software. And we're like, no, anyone should be able to do it. I mean, it's really what computers are built for. But that required a long-term vision and required a lot of technical breakthroughs. And I settled into this more long-term view of my career. Like, I knew that I wanted to work on this company. I knew it was gonna take us into all sorts of places, including AI, and it is as intellectually stimulating and technically interesting as any other company you can think of. And so from the start, we had this vision of we want people to work at Replit for as long as they can, and we want it to be less about sort of a get rich quick scheme and the way we structure our compensation, how we the stock awards we gave early people, we still do are very generous with it. And for example, we were one of the companies on the earlier sides to start to do secondaries. So in 21, we did secondary for the team, and I think again in 23. And we were like a Series B company. We just raised our Series C. And the idea is that, like, yeah, if you worked at Replit for a few years, you should be able to pay off your student debt. You should be able to buy a house. You should be able to get married. You should be able to have a regular human existence. Like, you shouldn't have this delayed life plan of, oh, I'm going to get rich, then I'm going to do all the human things. And you should be able to take care of yourself, live a healthy life, work hard, but have also stamina to be able to go, the distance. And so I've always believed it's a bit of a marathon. There are sprints here and there, especially around launches like we did with Agent 3 recently. But for the most part, I think working at Replit has a different quality than companies of our stage. We have a lot more people with families. We're talking about the livability of San Francisco. I don't think San Francisco is a very livable city. On the safety side, it's awful. I think it improved recently with the new governance in San Francisco.
Yeah.
It's also fairly expensive. It is hard to have children there. You worry about their safety consistently. But if you go south, there are a lot of really livable places. We talked about San Jose. It is possible for someone who is working at a company like ours to be able to afford a mortgage, afford to be able to have a family, and be able to live comfortably in the Bay Area. So that's sort of how our mindset have always operated, which I think is probably different than most companies at our stage.
I think it's totally different. And we're going to get to Agent 3 in a minute because I just tried it yesterday and it blew my mind. What do you make of this whole 996 paradigm that is trending on Twitter right now and that is supposed to be the standard if you want to build a big company? Is that real? Is that applied to Replit? Do you? Dorset.
We've always taken the view of seasonality. Like I think even in, early human history, like, you have the season in which you're like planting the crop, the season when you're harvesting, the season in which nothing is happening, and maybe the winter where you're just relaxing and waiting. And I think there are periods like Replit, we do about two major releases a year and maybe two minor ones. The two major ones tend to be around September time, like Agent 3, and then another major one around February, March, perhaps more March. And then there's like maybe like, more minor releases around like, December and maybe somewhere in June or what have you. So especially around the major releases, we end up doing a lot more than 996. We end up doing 12, 7. But but for the most part, it's a lot more sustainable. And we let people kind of pick their schedule, and especially with people with families, kind of it makes sense. We have people that spend a lot of time in the office on the younger side, but we have people that go home to dinner and spend time with their families. We provide dinner twice a week, Monday and Wednesday, and a lot of people stick around, and that ends up being a good time for people to hang out and create more social connection. But we also have 2 days of work that people can work from home. Some people still choose to go to the office. So yeah, intensity I think ebbs and flows, which I think is the what comes natural to us as humans.
I absolutely agree with you, and this is the first mature perspective that I heard on the matter, and that when you're cranking, 996 looks adorable. You're like 12, 12, 7. You know what I mean? Because like you gotta ship stuff. But then you have to, let the pedal off, and recoup for the next big spread.
Yes,
And, in the meantime, you're fixing bugs, you're taking customer inquiries, changes, things of that nature.
that's right.
I'm sure that you're right now, you're off the sprint of Agent 3, right? Which is, it seems like a 10x improvement over A2.
Hmm.
Did I get that right? And then,
Yep.
and sort of like, I'm sure that there is like, around the edges problem for like the agent just running off for 10 hours to complete a task.
Yeah.
So in my own experience, so like I'm building, so we took the last 2 days to build agents here at Paid. And I decided to build an agent that goes through my inbox and finds everywhere where I accepted a meeting verbally that I have not put on my calendar, which
Mm.
I unfortunately do all the time.
Mhm, mhm,
I'm very promiscuous with my time because
mhm,
I like to do many things,
mhm,
and I create an overlap, and which leads to disappointment. So Replit found that it picked the right model to understand that it's not an event appointment, but it's like me agreeing to do something, right? So you have to read several threads in
mhm.
to figure that out. And then it sent me on a quest to like find the right keys to actually integrate, with
Yeah.
my EOAuth and like in my email, and then like it's asking me for my OpenAI key. And I'm literally don't know where to find it. So I'm asking Replit to like guide me through it. And like Replit, I can hear a sigh and be like, oh, Manny, come on, man. And like it does work to
Yeah,
actually explain to this
yeah,
dumbass, you know what I mean? Like where to go find these things.
yeah.
So I really appreciate the work that happened with A3. So tell me, what was the big reception, and what are you fixing now that you were not expecting to fix?
Before we get on the rough edges of Agent 3, the connectors, while we're talking about integrations, we have a launch. Actually, it's already out in beta. You can go to your Replit account, and there's like on the side there's like connectors. But September 30th, we're gonna launch with like 25 connectors. Gmail, Google Drive would be one of
Oh,
them.
so this problem goes away
This
in
problem goes
15
away
days.
entirely.
Okay, perfect.
Like it would be just a click, 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 done. You give permissions, and we can, grab your emails and all of that. And you could do, agent can write programs around it. It's going to be epic, because I think that's the next phase of how useful Replit could become in your life and in your work, is the ability to integrate into your systems. With Agent 3, we focused on, I would say, three things primarily. One is completeness. So a lot of what people talk about with vibe coding, the term that's sort of emerged around being able to trust the AI to write the code almost entirely, is that people get to 80% of the way, but then they can't finish the 20%. And partly
Right.
because the system the agent built like might not be scalable, requirements change along the way. And you get to a point, but by the way, this is a software problem in general. It's not just with AI. Like a lot of engineers end up having to rewrite their app entirely because they made decisions that were wrong early on, right? So what we did with Agent 3 is that it continuously refactors the work and tests it along the way. And so Agent 3 is actually a team of agents. So there's an agent, I'm not sure if you kind of read the logs, but like there's an agent that is called the architect that continuously monitors the architecture of the system and gives feedback to the main agent so that it does the right things and tells it,
You
you know,
can see it in runtime. You
yeah,
can see the changes in runtime. So
yeah,
you
yeah,
can actually feel it, by
yeah.
seeing
And
the work.
you can see the architect saying like, I don't like this is not very secure, and then the other agent kind of arguing back with it. It was like, it's fine for now.
The fuck do you mean it's not
Yeah,
secure? It is.
yeah. Exactly. And then so that's the first goal, is completeness. The second goal is, you know uh autonomy and the ability for you to not have to babysit the agents. Like with Agent 2 and 1 and all the other systems out there, you have to constantly answer questions, constantly test the app. You can't really step away for that long. It is sort of like the most annoying part of it. It is not fully synchronous. It takes 5 to 10 to 20 minutes to kind of complete a task, but it's also not fully asynchronous where you can like go cook a meal or grab some food and come back, right?
Right.
And so with Agent 3, the idea is autonomy. Like the agent should not rely on you to do QA. It should be able to spin up a browser, go around and click on the app and make sure that the app works. Or if it is like a background job or whatever, be able to run the API calls or write unit tests or what have you. So that's number two. And number three is the ability to be able to create automation workflows, other agents, things like that. And that's still sort of in the beta stage, and that's where the connectors really come in. But ultimately, it's really about solving programming. It's about giving the ability of creating software to everyone. Now, I think we overshot a little bit on some of these goals. So, for example, like Agent 3, it could be very anal about, the refactoring and security issues and things like that. So, if you're running Agent 3 on an existing code base that maybe was written by Agent 2 or written by human, it actually could be overbearing in that it would look at the code as like, oh, that's shit. Let me go
It will
fix
tell you it's
that. Let
all
me go
shit.
fix that. It's
like
all
like a
crap.
new employee coming in looking at the old code.
Yeah, and some people love that. Some people were like, "Oh, I love that. It's modernizing my application." Other people, it's like, "What? Like, I'm spending this so much money. It's not making any progress." And so we're trying to kind of tune that a little bit and give people a little bit more control over like how aggressive it is on quality control. That's one. And then second is the ability to be more synchronous. Like I think people still appreciate being able to have this like live feedback loop, and so striking that right balance is going to be difficult. But we're making immediate progress on those two.
So you talked about price. So let's talk about price because you are sticking to your $20 per user per month. And how do you think about agentic margins as things get bigger and they start running away from you?
The difficult part is how people think about value here. So when people come to Replit, they come with a mindset of, I'm buying a piece of software. In reality, you're hiring a piece of software. Agent 3 is an employee, is not a piece of software. So I think I would say even our $25 kind of SaaS subscription based pricing is actually giving people the wrong impression. because to actually build anything meaningful, you need to spend $100 or more. So in addition to $25 and the $25 credits, we send you into usage-based billing, and then we start charging you per token. Essentially, we call it effort-based pricing, depending on how much work that the agent do, and it gives you a
Uh,
nice receipt. It tells you like, here's all the things I worked on, and here's how much I'm charging you for it. I think that again, the challenge here is consumers are not, they don't understand that pricing model. So people who are successful with Replit, for example, a doctor that built an app on the order of hundreds of dollars that a developer quoted him $100,000, saved three orders of magnitude, says that Replit is cheap. We've had someone in a government where they built an education app that they quoted $10 million on it. They built it for like a few $100s. Says it's very cheap. Now, the person that's just starting out and they're seeing this like $10 work, I work for an hour, charge you $10 or whatever. It's like, oh, this is too expensive. This is more expensive than any other software that I've used. Like Adobe doesn't charge me $10 an hour, right?
right.
And so companies, businesses, small businesses, those people are much more comfortable with the pricing model, and the margin there is very healthy. But for consumers, we're trying to get them to success. And so we're trying not to over optimize on margin there, and just to make sure that, people are not having this sticker shock. So it's a bit of a challenge at that side. But I think the future of our business is one where businesses are paying the most for it because this is where it's adding the most value. So we want to
Right.
make it so that consumers have a good experience without breaking their wallet.
Got it. So when you talk about your hiring Replit, that's a very powerful word. So how much of Replit is the equivalent of a coworker?
It's getting there. Like I would say Agent One, I wouldn't even describe it as an intern. I would say it's still kind of more of a piece of software because it's just request response. Like, they'll spend 2 minutes max working. I would say Agent Two was an intern. Agent Two was like a perhaps an intern that doesn't even know how to test its own code and doesn't even know how to, like, it's just like an intern that's very good at generating tons of amounts of code, and it'll get you very far, but it requires constant hand holding. It's hard to get it to production safely and all of that. I'd say Agent 3 is probably a junior programmer. In some cases, maybe a mid-level programmer. So you're hiring a real programmer that you would pay like $150,000 for in the US. And I would say in a narrow case, like there are a lot of types of applications that I wouldn't even put on intern level. It's not going to
Yeah.
build you distributed systems. It struggles with like native apps and so on. But for the kind of apps that we're focused on, it's a junior programmer.
What prevents you for charging like that, for creating a junior programming package versus an intern package versus eventually you'll get to a senior programmer package?
I think you're right. I think this is where we need to head to. It's
Mhm.
hard. Like I think that with AI, and OpenAI talks a lot about this, Anthropic too. There's this dance between the technology and the consumer expectations. I remember when O1 first came out, everyone was disappointed. Why? Because people were trying to treat it as a chat model. It wasn't a chat model. It's not a chat model. It is a thinking, reasoning model. And so you need to spend a lot more time crafting a prompt
Mm,
than letting the agent kind of chew on it for a while. And it took a while for people to really appreciate that. I think the same thing with Agent 3. People will start appreciating that this is acting more like a human developer. And I would expect over the next year or so, people will wake up to the idea that AI is entering the agent era. The agent era is about less about working with software and more about working with entities that are simulating how a human knowledge worker would work. And this is not just software engineering. I think it'll happen in every aspect of your business, in accounting and HR and finance and so on.
got it. So eventually, or even now, you can think of hiring these entities, and even though your pricing right now is per consumption per token, and you're very transparent about it, there is a world in which you start thinking about this as, alternatives for
Yeah.
headcount replacement.
Yeah. I think it's going to be orders of magnitude cheaper than a human worker. It's still expensive relative to a piece of software. So instead of paying $100,000 for a worker, you pay $1,000 essentially for this. And I think we're going to see the pricing plans kind of trend into more of that direction.
Got it. So you just raised $250 million at a $3 billion valuation. Where's that money going? Like, what's the next chapter for Replit with this new infusion of cash?
You and I were talking earlier about like the sort of the immigrant experience and all of that. I mean, the thing is, I just don't know how to spend money very well.
We never those amounts to us look imaginary. You know what I mean? You
Yeah,
read the newspaper, you're like, whatever, somebody else's problem.
yeah. So, need to kind of change the mindset a little bit about how fast we can go, how much we can scale, and all of that.
Right. Right.
I think R&D is the answer. Like just hiring more awesome people, perhaps spending more money on compute and experiments, and trying to continue to push the state of the art of agents. Like I think of Replit as like an agent lab. We're not an AI lab in which we're kind of doing large scale machine learning. We are sitting on top of these AI labs who do large scale machine learning research. And what we do is agent research. How can we repurpose that technology in order to create these entities, bring to life human level entities that can do real work for you? So R&D will continue to be the main thing. But we're at a point where the business is doing well, and it makes sense to pour more into sales and marketing. Sales and marketing has been like vanishingly small at our outlet for a long time, especially since commercially we weren't that successful. But now it's time to scale that out because we're adding so much value to companies and to the enterprise and to the individuals. And I think it's a time to get it into the hands of more people and get it into more companies.
So you recently published your numbers were actually leaked, I think, like
Yeah,
they showed that $100 million AR.
right. The last leak was 150.
100
It's more.
last leak was 150.
Yeah.
Perfect. Do you find who did the leak, or do you not care? Because you react to guy kind of pretty well about it. Like, you were pretty chill about it.
It's a VC for sure, and I don't know why they did it, and it's just not a big deal. Like, I think I'm just going to be more careful in the future with who we share information with. We've been fairly careful, but just by nature, I'm very trusting. I think that Silicon Valley culture tend to be one where people can trust each other. I think that's changing a little bit. I think the VC market has become so lucrative. It's especially lucrative on the management fee side. So you can be a shitty VC and make a lot of money. Uh,
Oh no, man, you're poking at the bear. They stopped telling you so many truths.
and so you have a lot of short-term thinkers that are going in, and I don't know what's their incentive to be leaking these things. Maybe they're trying to curry a favor with a journalist, so that they cover their ass in some future incident or something like that. But I can only speculate as what the incentive is. I think it's just bad for the entire ecosystem for that to continue to happen.
No, I 100% agree. So back to how you're spending $250 million. So you're hiring a CRO and a bunch of marketers and a bunch of sellers, and now a seller near you will have some Replit in their bag, and they're gonna come sell it to you. Is that how you think about it, or is it a different
Right
approach?
now, sales is largely, sales assist is largely PLG based, and we upsell into the
Yep.
enterprise. There's enough leads on the PLG side that we can grow the sales team tremendously and still not have to go outbound. But at some point, you would want to do demand gen and go outbound. So if I'm not thinking about just this year's growth, but next year and the year after that, I think we
Yeah.
need to just prepare for success. And this is something totally new.
100%.
Yeah, this is something totally new to me. So I'm sure I'm going to make mistakes.
Yeah, no, talking to the guy who invented Outbound, it's a muscle,
Yeah,
and it's
you
not,
did.
and it's not easy. Yeah, it takes a little bit, especially if you got your hunters, getting used to getting fed, they're not hunters anymore. So you're gonna have to figure out how to change the sort of like the makeup of the team to have more people being aggressive about knocking on doors and educating, because like at the end of the day, it's educating. Like you don't know about this goodness of A3 until you try it, and you don't try it unless you know. And like you don't know sometimes if you're not on Reddit all the time, like somebody's gonna have to tell you, and
Yeah.
that's what sellers do.
Yeah. And so how would you, I mean, you said you sort of invented a model. How did that come about?
Well, it's funny you ask me. So, we had a company that was going out of business, and we only had about a few months of cash left. So we built an engine that would send personalized emails and follow up on them to try to generate business. And that engine worked quite well, but now I needed to tell more people about it. So, we mixed that engine with a little bit of cold calling. And how we went to evangelize that you should have this engine as part of your sales stack. And back then, sales stack was not a thing. Like I think Jason Lemkin invented the term sales stack.
Yeah.
Um, in that your sales had a stack of technology that you needed to operate. And when we realized that we were a the workflow layer on top of the sales stack. So you had a CRM that is your system of record, but you had a workflow that had to be executed. Then in the workflow, you decide what modality you want to use to sell, right? Like for instance, for you, you have right now you have a ton of inbound, and then you go sell into the inbound. That's great. That's a warm lead that knows about you that you just need more education. Now, sometimes there are people that look like the ones that came inbound that haven't come inbound, and you want to go tell them about Replit because they look like the ones that you already got. So once you have that look-alike group, somebody's going to have to go out and tell them. You can use
Right.
ads that work sometimes, but nothing like a good conversation with, a peer that tells them, "Hey, man, like I just built an agent A3. It took me 5 minutes and it built all this value." So that was my experience. But one of the things that is not well understood, and that's because it hit me really hard when I sort of got it, was like your business model is different than that of say Cursor
Yeah.
or Windsurf or Lovable. Can you explain to this audience like how you're fundamentally different and how your like economics are fundamentally different than all these other players?
Yeah. There's a lot of similarities. Ultimately, we're all generating code with AI, but I think that Replit is I think the innovator of the idea of agents that not only can generate code but can go to the web and install packages, that can go provision a database for you, that can provision object storage for you, that can help you with deployment, that can debug deployment problems. And so like the idea of like an end-to-end agent, agent v1 was the kind of the spark of that. And I think agent 3 is is kind of the
The
what was it?
fire.
The fire. Yeah, exactly. It kind of we lit a bit of fire, we lit a spark, and now the entire forest is on fire in a way. And so uh and so we again we want to automate the entire experience. Cursor is trying to supercharge engineers, which is great. Some of the more prototyping tools, they're trying to help you explore ideas, which is also great. Replit is sitting in between those, where we help you explore ideas, but we want to take you all the way to production, and we don't want
Mm.
to have you learn code, don't have to hire a developer, and so it's a lot more ambitious of an idea than any of the other ones. I would say in the category of tools that are made for non-engineers, which there are a lot now, I
Yeah.
think we're the only one that can get you to production. You mentioned Jason Limkin. Jason tried a bunch of tools. He had troubles with a lot of them, including ours. But now I think he's 6 apps in. Saster.ai is entirely built on Replit, and he's a big champion now. So, and he doesn't have any coding background. He's obviously a tech guy, but doesn't have any coding background. He's able to do it without an engineer, and he thinks of Agent 3 as his team. And on the enterprise side, we're going to companies and we're saying this could change how you work entirely. And it took a lot, speaking of education, took a lot of education. They come to us and they're like, hey, we're looking at Cursor or whatever. We want you as part of the bake off so we can see which one is supercharging our engineers. We're like, no, we don't want to be part of that. Here's what we should do. Bring everyone in your company, anyone who's interested, and let us do a hackathon. And we're going to show you that every person in your company is a programmer.
Mm.
And they're like, what? What do you mean? And it's like, no, bring your salespeople, bring your marketing people, bring your HR people, bring your ops people, everyone. And just give us a few hours. And by the end of the 2 or 3 hours hackathon, you're going to find that everyone in your team is facing inefficiencies. Yeah, know that big part of their job is routine. Know that there are a lot of holes in your workflows and how you could be doing things better. And every one of those people can build applications to make the process of running your company a lot smoother. And so that really starts to change what a corporation is. If everyone in the corporation is massively levered by this magical technology that we call programming, then the nature of the firm, the nature of how people work fundamentally changes. And I think this is the
Yeah.
value that we deliver. So it's not only just about engineering, product, and design, which Replit is used in as well. People use Replit for prototyping, in some cases going all the way to production. But I think more importantly, I think this is where really the future is headed, is the person that's sitting in your operations side know how to make the business more valuable. We've had examples where ops people drive tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue to the company because they're on the front line, understanding what's missing, where there could be a problem. And a lot of cases, they go to engineers and they beg and they plead and they go to their managers and say, give us a team of engineers. We're going to go handle this. And usually the managers is like, well, how about go find a vendor to buy software? They go find a vendor, and usually it adds more tech debt, it adds more problems than it actually solves them, right? I mean, that's the problem with SaaS. It's like one size fits all. And it usually means one size fits no one. And when you buy a vendor, it often actually, you know, uh, over time, you have all these different silos of data. They don't talk to each other. It makes the operations of the business less efficient. So now people are empowered to build their own tools that fit their bespoke workflows and day-to-day work.
So there's a lot of other IDE, agentic IDEs in the space that will, would roughly have the same claim. So which ones are hyped? Which ones are real? How do you sort out what's good for you?
There's a table going around and showing which um, code gen platforms, because I really don't think a lot of them are agents. Which code gen platforms actually have all these features? Which one has autonomous agents? Cursor recently added it. Maybe Devin, there's agents. None of them in the sort of more app creation space have an actual agent that can go run for 20, 30, 40, 2 hours.
Yeah.
So that's one. Which one has like a virtual machine environment in the cloud? Very few. A lot of them are just purely front end tools, and don't actually have a virtual machine it's sitting on and actually working with. How many of them support all these programming languages? We support every programming language on the face of the earth, right? Now you're getting to vanishingly small size, perhaps even zero or one being Replit. Which ones actually has a deployment environment in addition to the development environment? Which ones provides
Mm,
a database off the shelf? Really, now the only one is Replit. There's no other platform that's end to end other than Replit, and an
mm.
agent sitting on top of it that knows how to operate the entire thing.
So those are design choices, right? Like you made those choices by design, and I'm presumably because you came from this vision of like teaching everyone how to code, and teaching everyone how to code means that you got to ship apps in production,
That's right.
right? So where is the space for like the lovables? So like these are thoughts and prayers on top of Claude, like up fast growth, lots of excitement. Like so, where is their space in the world, and where is Cursor space in the world, or is this a world in which Replit just wins?
I think the Cursor, Copilot, Devin space is the idea that we're going to supercharge engineers. That space is obviously very valuable. It's very competitive and it's very zero sum. You can see there's a
Mm,
chart going around with Copilot revenue going down, Cursor revenue going up, exactly tick for tick, proportional. Now there's another chart going with Claude Code and Codex kind of fighting for market share. It's
yep.
a very zero sum game. Now, on the side of like non-coders, I think it's a positive sum game because we're all bringing new types of coders onto the market, right? Whether
Mm,
it's us, Figma Make, Canvas Thing, Lovable Bolt, all these tools, there's an expanding market share. So I think it's a lot more exciting market to be in because
mm,
you're creating something new as opposed to you're fighting for existing workflows, existing utilities. But I would also add the low code, no code market into that as well. So like you can think of like the retools of the world, the Zapiers, all of that. I think it's kind of a similar space. We're all kind of trying to empower everyone who doesn't have the ability to write code to be able to create software. So I think where within that market, you'll start seeing segments. I think where a lot of the competition, and I think at some point it will be zero sum, is on the prototyping. So a lot of the tools that I just mentioned are able to create a really cool front end. Now you can try to connect the front end to like a backend as service like Supabase or some others, which I know some of
mm,
them do, but it's very tricky and it opens up to security vulnerabilities. There's been a lot that's been written about this, and it doesn't really get you all the way to production because the agent needs to be sitting on top of all these technologies and be able to provision them, migrate the databases, do everything on your behalf. It needs to be a vertically integrated tool. So I think where Replit will kind of the place where Replit sits uniquely is the ability to take these ideas all the way to a working software in production, whether it is handling end user, like an app that end users use, or an app internally that's handling operations, or an agent or workflow that's kind of helping you manage the business. Um, and look, I think people will still use Replit for prototyping, but they can also import a Figma file, import code from other places, and so I don't think the prototyping market is that exciting because
mm.
it is first, it is easy to build something there. It is not that difficult to put Claude in front of React.js and render that. But two, I don't think it's where the most value is.
Got it. So would you say that are you generating new entrepreneurs who are going from zero to idea to business? Or are you empowering current entrepreneurs who are just, who now have the power to not have to hire, somebody through Upwork to like do your work, and now you can just do it yourself using Replit and like see your vision from zero to completion, or it's a little bit of both.
I think it's all of the above. Like we're seeing a YouTuber, his name is Nick Conley, after Agent 3 came out, went to Upwork, copy pasted an entire job, creating I think a salon app, put it into Replit, 45 minutes, $25 in, he had a full app. Now he could kind of go back to Upwork, sell it back for, a couple $1,000, whatever they asked for, and
Yeah,
he
yeah,
money. So there's a huge arbitrage opportunity for freelancers to be able to
yeah.
do a lot more work, or even if you don't know how to code, be able to still build
But
applications.
eventually that goes away, you would think, right? Like
I
the
think
people
so.
who won't have the idea, like so,
Yeah.
like Upwork, you're putting Upwork out of business. Is that what you're saying?
Possibly. I don't know how the future unfolds, but I think the way it's currently formed, where people put in these essentially what prompts, they can go put them into Replit
Yeah.
directly. So that's one. I think is more of an arbitrage thing. Second is the ability to be an entrepreneur. Now there are two kinds. One is sort of a micro-SaaS entrepreneur, being able to build these SaaS companies very quickly. We see people get to millions of dollars of ARR very quickly, and the way to make this defensible is to build a SaaS solution that solves a problem you've dealt with in the past. You
Mm,
have very specific domain knowledge that is hard to come by, that you can operationalize and scale in a piece of software. So, if you're someone like, there's a story of actually a CFO for a VC company in Europe that used Replit to create a platform for other CFOs at VC firms. There are very few people in the world that will know how to create that, right? Like, it's really hard for a Silicon Valley company to be able to create that. Most of the entrepreneurs here are not CFOs, but he built that and now he's scaling it, and that's making a lot of money. So if you have domain
Mm.
knowledge in your head, you can put that into a piece of software and sell it. And the other aspect is small businesses. So like small businesses that were perhaps not scalable, they needed maybe a lot of labor. Now they can become a lot more efficient. So there's a family-run, house painting business that the son in the family is a big user of Replit. He was handling operations, the marketing, the sales, the accounting, all of that, and they were running into bottlenecks where they had to hire people, but he's using Replit to scale his business. And so he doesn't
Mm.
need to go buy a lot of SaaS software. He doesn't need to go hire a lot of people or contractors or whatever. He can make their business more efficient by making software for it.
What happens to SaaS in a world where people can custom build the agents, custom build apps based on exactly they need to have? It's not one size fit all or one size fits none, but it's like you solve your problem in the way that you really wanted to, which is what Klarna tried to do, a couple of years ago with a big announcement, and they have to like go, eat that toad. But now it seems like it's getting more and more possible according to the direction that you're telling me Replit is going. So
Yeah.
what happens to the entire SaaS ecosystem?
Yeah, Klarna CEO is a very interesting guy. Sebastian is definitely ahead of the curve. And sometimes you have to eat your words when you're like a little too ahead of the curve. But um,
The future is just unevenly distributed. That's all,
that's
but
right.
it's here already.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I think it'll explode into a small business market. So I think the idea of Silicon Valley companies being able to create these point solutions and scale them to billions of dollars of revenue, I think that's going away.
Mm.
I think the Silicon Valley SaaS um, market will be made more of these like system of records. You mentioned CRMs, any systems that are not only point solution, but actually are horizontal solutions where also developers can hook into and other AI agents and then create an MCP server on top of it. Those systems, I think, have very lasting advantages just because this is where all
Mm.
the data is. There's a network effect. There's a developer mindshare. Salesforce, HubSpot are the great examples. I think those systems are fine.
But are they fine? Are they growing fine? Or are they fine in terms of like they're going to stay put the way they are? They're not going to churn, but they're also not going to see a lot of growth.
They need to change their mindset a little bit. They need to start thinking of themselves as like more of an open system, like MCPs, and being able to be a platform where other agents can sit on top of.
Dude,
Uh,
Salesforce just closed the API to Slack. So like if nothing else, they're going in the opposite direction of
yeah,
that.
I think it's wrong. I think it's
Mm.
wrong to go. I'm not sure about the Slack case because we're working with them and we have a API access. I think there was some abuse that was happening there. So I'm not entirely
Oh,
sure
okay.
what's going on. But I think there are companies that are certainly closing down. And I think that's wrong. That's short sighted.
Mm.
In fact, AI will drive companies towards more openness, those who want to survive. And then, like, instead of like one size fit all sort of, let's say, some kind of SaaS software, like a org chart SaaS software. Uh, like every company will build their own sort of org chart software because they have. I mean, we've had this experience. Uh, One person on our very small HR team didn't find the exact org chart software that they want to use from vendors, and it was like costing tens of thousands of dollars. And she built it over 3 days in Replit, and that's what we use right now.
That's
So
amazing.
those point solutions, I think, those are in trouble because either companies will build them internally or company like I am someone who worked in HR in hotels for a long time. I know exactly what kind of HR software hotels would need. I'm going to build exactly for that, and that's going to be maybe I am building HR software for hotels in Istanbul, and maybe that's like a $10 million business, but it is not like a thing that's going to IPO.
Got it. So you're gonna see the resurgence of the small entrepreneur,
Yes.
the one that just builds. It's not gonna be a billionaire, but it might be a millionaire, but it might be $100,000 there. Live a good life, solve a problem.
I think that's better, right? Like, just to like put a more societal angle on it, like, look, I think that the conglomeration of the world where things are centralizing into a few big companies that are government sanctioned monopolies, I think created a lot of societal ills. I think there's just the corporate world is not always the best environment for people to work. I think it's better if there's a lot more smaller businesses, if people have more freedom for their lives, their work, where they want to live, how they want to live. I think the environment is would be a lot more, the market would be a lot more dynamic. I think a lot more people will get rich. Maybe, there's less billionaires and a lot more millionaires. I think that might be a good thing.
I love that, and I love to end on that note. Amjad, it's been such a treat and a pleasure to have you on the podcast. Our listeners learn a ton about the future of agents and how to make themselves more agents and get themselves paid by building agents.
Yeah, my pleasure. Yeah, I think that if I'm like giving a call to action, it's like jump head first. Like, don't think too much about it. I think the future really benefits those people who are more action oriented.
The future benefits the bold.
Yeah,
It always
exactly,
has.
exactly.